are listening to the Up and Under podcast, starting in 3, 2, 1.
Yo, what's up, guys? Welcome into the Up and Under podcast. I'm your host, Hani. Join with me, as always, it's Zeeshan.
Yo.
All right, man. So the playoffs are finally over. It's been a long road to get here, but we are finally here. Season's over. We have now crowned a champion. First and foremost, congratulations to the 2022 NBA champions, the Golden State Warriors. Boo. No,
Official Golden State Warriors hater over here.
Hey,
Listen, man, I don't like them either, to be honest. But
I said it before the final started. I hate both teams, and I'll stick by it. I would have said the same thing even if the Celtics won. But you know what's funny? The Celtics can't even win right. So, to me, they lost this series at Game 5. Like, that's, to me, where the Celtics blew
But,
it.
again, here, you know what? We'll talk about the finals in a bit. First of all, as you guys can see, a bit of a different setup here if you guys are watching the YouTube video. Trying some new things out. Hopefully you guys like it. I think, it's pretty solid.
It's a work in progress.
Yeah, it's a work in progress. So, yeah, just in case y'all were confused as to what was happening.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong. Just trying out some new things, seeing what works, what doesn't. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. But with the playoffs now over, we wanted to kind of look back and to look at some of the things that we learned from these playoffs. Because obviously, every playoffs is different. Every playoffs has their, triumphs. Every playoffs has their failures. And there's just a lot of things that you just learn about the league, about the sport, and the direction of how things are going to be going in the future. So we wanted to kind of touch upon, 4 or 5 different things that we learned from the 2022 NBA playoffs, which starts us off with the NBA champions, the Golden State Warriors. And Steph Curry won his first Finals MVP award.
Well deserved.
Yeah, I personally think if there was any year that Curry deserved a Finals MVP, it was this one, mainly because Klay did not look like himself.
I mean, again, he just came back off of 2 years. I'm not gonna lie, I was kind of roasting Klay at times, but to be objective, like he hasn't played ball in 2 years.
Yeah, exactly.
So he definitely deserved all of the,
Apparently, he led the Warriors in minutes in the playoffs. That's what I heard somewhere.
That's impressive.
So
that's very impressive.
It's good for his future in the sense that we know, okay, he's able to take some of the rigors of a season and a postseason, and Klay will be looking good. And also, who would give it to Draymond Green? I'm sorry. I mean, there was a very good argument that Andrew Wiggins might have gotten consideration, considering how well he actually played in this NBA Finals.
On both ends.
And you know what's funny? And people are getting mad at me for this because instead of me being like everyone else being oh my God, Andrew Wiggins, I'm mainly looking at it. I'm like, really? I knew he had this potential within him. We all saw it. This is how he became the number 1 overall pick. The fact of the matter is, I'm just mad at how bad he played in Minnesota. And now, not all of it was his fault, but most of it was. Most of it, clearly, the defense was by choice. He didn't want to play defense when in Minnesota. We know that part. He comes to Golden State, Steve Kerr, Draymond Green. They're going to force you to play defense. And then, again, his offensive game just opened up because of the fact that, he has Steph Curry and Klay Thompson next to him who can take a lot of the scoring pressure off of him, and he can just do his thing. But I will give him credit. He did play very well. He made some big shots, especially against Jason Tatum.
Yeah, man. Shout out to Andrew Wiggins, man, because if there's one person I was rooting for in the series, it was definitely Andrew Wiggins. Shout out to Vaughn. Shout out to GTA.
Yo, I'm rooting for Gary Payton, yo.
Well, and, listen, Gary Payton, right? Gary Payton Jr. I will say, regarding this championship for the Warriors, I think this is my, I haven't liked the Warriors since they started this era, right? I'm not a fan of them by any stretch. But I think this championship was the one where, I didn't have as many bad feelings about, their first championship. First of all, I'm a LeBron fan, so obviously I wasn't a fan of that. But their first championship, I didn't really like the whole vibe of their team. Like me as an outside non-Golden State fan. And then obviously their 2 with Kevin Durant, everyone was rooting against them because they completely ruined the NBA for those two and a half seasons basically until KD got injured. But this year, you can't take anything away from them this year because, like they built it the right way this year. They have their franchise stars, but then they had a guy like Klay Thompson coming off of 2 years of injuries. You had a guy like Draymond Green who they drafted. Question marks about how is he looking. Jordan Poole they got from the draft. He was basically in the G League last season. They developed him into a very good NBA player. Andrew Wiggins' value was an all-time low when they traded for him, right? They turned him into a two-way monster.
It was a steal of a deal.
Kevon Looney is another guy, not really highly touted, but they turned him into a very valuable player, right? You go down the line for the Warriors. Actually, I saw something where the Warriors, I think in the last 20, 25 years, something like that, are the first championship team with, I think, 10 players they drafted on their team. Listen, man, you want to talk about building the right way? We're going to talk about this a bit later as well, but they built it the right way, especially for this year, So I do have to give them credit for that. And then talking about Steph Curry especially, listen, man, I think he solidified his legacy with this finals.
Oh, yeah, he's a guaranteed Hall of Famer. Like, first ballot, there's no question about that. With the accolades that he's won, he's guaranteed a spot in the Hall of Fame. I think for now, the question is coming into where does he rank all time? I'm still of the mind. Now, people are saying that he's top 10 or...
I think he got into the top 10 for me. Off of this one, I think for me, he's in the top 10.
I think he's still on the cusp. I think... Yeah, like, I just think there's still 8 or 9 guys I can name ahead of him. But I
would say he's 10. I would say he's 10.
I'd argue, 10th or 11. Like, he's within the top, well within the top 13 or 15, I would say. Like, that's pretty much hands down. And again, there's two ways to look at this on an all-time list. You can look at the accomplishments, but you also got to look at individual talent and how good you were. So that balance is how these rankings are determined. And I think in terms of accomplishments alone, that vaults them up very highly on the list.
But I will say quickly before we move on to the next point is that there's two things that work for him. I think, first of all, this finals MVP, the one question mark about his legacy was finals MVP. Now, again, he should have won, I think, in 2015. We all know that. Obviously, if LeBron didn't win it, but...
Listen, man. Andre Iguodala, man.
Shout out to Iguodala, man. I've always liked Iguodala since his Philly days, but let's be real here. Steph Curry, if there's anybody on the Warriors that deserved that finals MVP, it was Steph Curry, considering he outplayed him in basically every statistical category. But then he got that finals MVP this year. But the thing I think that really solidifies him in that top, as you said, 12 range, top 10 for me is his impact on the game. We can't deny that he's been one of the, I think, top 5 most impactful players on the NBA ever.
He's definitely
in terms of what he's done with the whole 3-point revolution.
He's influenced the sport in. Now, depending on who you talk to, you can say positive or negative, but either way, he's made an impact in the sense that he's changed the way teams play offensively, and the reality of the fact is that nobody can play like he does. And that's and again, unrelated to Steph Curry or the Warriors, and you were talking about how good the Warriors were, but like, I'm mad at the league, and we're going to get to this in the next few points, but the league is so pathetic for the fact that we've allowed the same team to reach the finals for the last 8 years. Or like they've been in 8 of the last maybe 10 finals? Something like that. It's absolutely sickening for that. And the reality is the Warriors, they did it the right way. Bringing us into the second thing we learned from the playoffs. Teams that are built the right way have more sustained success. We're talking about the Golden State Warriors, who, after 2 down years of missing the postseason, injuries, and all that stuff, they retooled, they restockpiled, they used good front office work, and look at them now. They're back. They were back in the NBA Finals, and they won another championship, all by just making the right moves and building their team. They didn't panic.
Starts out with the owner up top, right? I saw something about, obviously, Joe Lacob bought the team, I think, for $300 million, and now it's worth what, $6 billion or something like that.
It's pretty up there, yeah.
But again, I saw something about him. He didn't use any taxpayer money for the arena, right? He spent all of that himself, or I guess his investors, whoever the shareholders.
Talking about the Chase Center.
Yeah.
It's a nice arena.
Yeah, you've been there.
I have been there. It's a very nice arena.
Again, I that's something I very much give him credit for, because a lot of teams like wasting taxpayer. Again, it's not completely wasting taxpayer money because it does bring in revenue and whatnot. I get that, but like there's also the whole allocating funds for a sports arena thing, public funds. But again, like it starts with the top, right? And he's talked about numerous times. There was always other owners grumbling about, oh, he's cheating the system by paying this much. He said, no, listen, if we're winning a championship every single year, we can. Then I'll foot the bill. Whatever the bill is, I'll pay it. And a lot of NBA owners are not willing to do that, right? And so credit to him, because it starts from the top, and you see where that trickle down effect occurs. Right?
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think when you talk about the top, Bob Myers, he is. Some of the moves this guy makes are so good. Like, there's only like a handful of GMs or presidents of the basketball operations that like I will truly I can trust, and Bob Myers is one of them. Just because again, the trades he makes, like buying low on Andrew Wiggins, like that's like a stock move that you would do.
One person I forgot to mention, I knew I was forgetting one person that came to mind, Otto Porter Jr. We said last offseason that was a very, very underrated pickup, and look what he was doing. He started in the NBA Finals.
Well, listen, Otto Porter Jr., he's not... We were just mad at his contract that the Wizards gave him, but...
He's a good player.
He can be a serviceable role player. There was nothing wrong with the player in general. It was just he was being overpaid at the time. But, yeah, they build their teams the right way. We saw what happened with Andrew Wiggins. But even, like, other examples of teams that do this really well. The Boston Celtics, as much as it pains me to admit it. But they do this... Their version of doing this is they have a heavy development-focused system. And they used the draft very well. Like, they had their picks that they fleeced out of Brooklyn. And they got Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Marcus Smart,
Robert Williams, and
they made it to an NBA Finals. And Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown haven't missed the playoffs since they got into the league, which is pretty good. Another team, again, you might call this a homer pick, but they're a very consistent team. It's the Toronto Raptors. Culture of winning and defense. Again, talking about another executive who you can trust wholeheartedly. It's Masai Ujiri, and his team. Like, the Raptors, they do such a good job of building a culture and a developmental system. Like, our G League team, did we just win another championship?
I think so, didn't we?
Well, I don't know.
No. We had the highest seed.
We had the number one seed. But either way, our development
But they did win a championship, the Pascal Siakam, Fred VanVleet year.
Yep. But again, they're a good developmental system. We build our players up. Like, look at Stanley Johnson. He came into our system as a broken player and
basically wasn't an NBA player.
No, and then now look, he got a 2-year deal with the Lakers. So
if they bring him back, he'll be on the Lakers.
Regardless,
not,
he truly learned, and that's how the Raptors really focus on developing their guys and building a culture of sustained winning. Miami Heat culture, we already know that. Now their version is mainly they focus on bringing like-minded players into their system or molding guys to fit their culture.
They make the big splashes in free agency, right, with that Miami attraction, but then they fill out the rest of their teams with, like you said, like-minded guys for the Heat culture, and also guys who, like the Max Struses, the Duncan Robinsons, guys who are very obscure, who nobody really takes a chance on, but they do, and they develop the hell out of those role players.
Yeah,
they're amazing at developing those role players alongside of getting those free agent stars, as in Jimmy Butler, the LeBron Jameses.
And you kind of get what we're getting at. That there's different ways to build a team the right way, but you have to build it. That's the key factor. And another team would be the Milwaukee Bucks, who they build around a superstar. You draft a superstar, develop him, and you put pieces around him. And then there's the Memphis Grizzlies route, where again, a young team builds from the draft. You keep going. But regardless of the fact, if you build your team, what we learned from this playoff is that if you build your team the right way, you're going to be guaranteed more sustained success.
And the key word there is sustained success, right? Now, you can build a team, right, as, bringing us to our next point about, like, the whole issue of super teams. This year, super teams did not work clearly. It's a question as to whether the super team era is dead. But either way, the bot teams, as we call it, or, the super teams, clearly did not work this season. I think teams, based on our last point about sustained success, you can bring in a team, for example, like the Miami Heat did that. Again, that has more to do with bringing in a guy like LeBron James who went to 8 straight finals. But, you build a team, with your max players. It can work for like 2-3 years. But we don't see that sustained success as we saw with the Golden State Warriors, as we've seen for the Boston Celtics, who have gone to 2 conference finals since, what was it, 2018, right? And then have gone to an NBA finals now.
Or even Toronto to a lesser degree. Like, we haven't missed the playoffs since, what, 20, except 1 year.
The Tampa year.
Yeah,
exactly.
that was it.
Right? That we saw this year, like, I think the balance, and we've talked about it in numerous episodes already, I think the balance in terms of thinking about how to build a basketball team is really changing and shifting. You know, there's the examples of the Golden States, the Bostons, the Torontos, the San Antonio Spurs of the past, right? Where, like, people are figuring out, hey, like, maybe we should just pool our resources into development, into, you know, finding front office guys who really think well, bring guys, out of the mold, to build a culture, build a team, the culture, as I said, and then working off of that to build a sustainable team that can, achieve that success, but on a much, longer basis than a bought team can. And we saw with this year, a team like the Brooklyn Nets were not even able to get past the first round. The Lakers did not even make the playoffs. The Clippers did not make the playoffs. And to a lesser degree, the Philadelphia 76ers, who, got a guy like James Harden, and they completely flamed out.
And there's 2 major problems, and that's probably going to be solved in the next collective bargaining agreements. But number one, it's the Supermax. The Supermax makes things very difficult, especially for these teams that are
that's
now...
That's definitely gone. I think that's gone.
It should be gone, because now you get into situations where, like we'll talk about the Kyrie Irving drama later on, but when you have to think about paying a guy $50 million, and, like, now when your top 3 guys each make $50 million each, how much money do you have for the rest of your guys? Like, a roster is at least 12 to 15 players deep. You got to still pay these guys in some sort of capacity. And the reality is that either you do what Joe Lacob does and fork over the money and just pay the bill, whatever it is, or you logically build your team, use the draft, use development, take chances on guys. But it's all about scouting and putting the right people in the positions to build these teams out the right way.
And I think one more point to add to that is that with top-heavy teams, we see that the stars usually get injured.
Yeah.
Right? Why do they get injured? Because there's so much responsibility on them, because the rest of the team is not filled out. When that happens and the stars are injured, that's a lost cause, because your team now without one of your stars is not going anywhere, right? And whereas if you have a deeper team, you're able to make up for that lost talent, right? So I think that's one interesting point as well that we, learned from this season. I think the final point that we want to talk about is the young stars. Now, we talked about this last postseason as well, but I think this postseason once again emphasized that, the league is changing hands, right? There's
the future's bright, man. Like, there's so many young stars that are now coming into this league that, especially in this past playoffs, that absolutely performed. And this is a playoffs, again, without LeBron James, with Kevin Durant being knocked out early. James Harden, again, flamed out. Like, the stars of, like, our era and the era before that are kind of starting to fizzle out. Like, and it's makes us feel kind of old to say that, but the reality is the league is actually looking to be in good hands. We're talking about stars like John Morant, for instance, in his playoff run with the Grizzlies. Like, I looked up his stats. In the playoffs, 27 points a game, 9 rebounds, 8 assists. 27.9 points per game, 9.8 assists, and 8 rebounds a game. He's a point guard. And he's about, 6'2"?
Yeah.
That's impressive, man.
I don't know. That might be generous, to be honest, but yeah.
Like, dude, like, it's honestly impressive how he is. Anthony Edwards, 25 a game, 3 assists.
In his first playoffs.
Yeah, in his first playoffs, 3 assists, 4 rebounds. Again, shot 45% from the field, 40% from 3. And
I was honestly very impressed by him, not just because of the numbers, but the eye test, right? The eye test really tells a tale of how ready you are as a young player. And he looked to be like, that was his environment, man. He was making big shots. He was playing hard on defense. Like the John Morant, Anthony Edwards matchup was very interesting because Anthony Edwards, for his part, he played really good defense that I hadn't seen from him yet. But hopefully I can see from more often. But he played really well, man. I was very impressed with him.
I saw this potential out of Anthony Edwards since he was drafted, and that's really why I was so confident with him being the number 1 pick, because I'm like, this guy is NBA ready, and now you can see the polish, and it's all starting to come together. But then we're talking, and then again, Scotty Barnes, although again his playoffs was cut short due to injury, again, you saw the impact he made. Where at times he became the Raptors' best player.
He was their best player in Game 1. Nobody else on the Raptors was ready except for Scotty Barnes, and that I think obviously doesn't look good for the rest of the guys. But I think they performed later on in the season. Minus Fred VanVleet, who was injured.
Yeah.
But that I think that's very telling for Scotty Barnes, right? Who, as a rookie in his first playoff game in a hostile. Wait, were we out? No. They were at home. In a hostile environment, he comes out and plays like that, and he's the best player on the team for the Raptors. And not even like he wasn't, he was making shots, but he was, backing guys down, being aggressive in his first game. And that, I think, really tells a lot about the type of player Scotty Barnes is and who he can be in the future.
Yeah, and then another guy, Luka Doncic, he's been my guy since day one. His playoff career averages are absolutely insane, but just from this past postseason, where he made his first conference finals, by the way, he didn't even play all the games. 31.7 points per game, 6 assists, and 8 rebounds a game? 9.8 rebounds a game. Shooting 45% from the field, 34% from three. Luka Doncic is actually probably the front runner in terms of some of the best among the young talent coming up now, where I think he's starting to become the LeBron type figure of the league.
I think he has a chance to be that, that next face of the league. Now, we can get into the discussion of how much does the league want to have him as the face of their league rather than guys like, like Ja Morant or Anthony Edwards, for example. But either way, Luka Doncic, I think, based on where his career can go, I've said this before, and I think multiple people have said it. The start to his career, he has the potential to technically really be the best NBA player, like the greatest NBA player of all time, based on his resume at the start of his career. Now, again, will that actually happen? Probably not, but his start is one of the best starts we've ever seen.
He's an incredible player, man. And then finally, again, the Boston Celtics duo, again, although they, I guess in the sense of Jason Tatum, he kind of underperformed in the NBA Finals when it mattered. Jaylen Brown performed very well, to his credit. But again, they still had some good postseason runs, and they're still young relatively in terms of, they still have to enter the primes of their careers. Like, Jason Tatum averaged 25.6 points per game, 6 assists, 6 rebounds. So you're seeing growth as a playmaker, and you're seeing some growth from him. Obviously, the shooting percentage, the field goal percentage wasn't that great, 42%, but he shot 39% from three, which definitely helped the Celtics get out of some binds.
I will say his playmaking really impressed me this postseason. Granted, he had a lot of turnovers, but I think those were growing pains, The one thing about him was always his playmaking, and for me this postseason, looking at how much teams focused on him and his ability to make those reads that he made this postseason, I don't think the Boston Celtics will have gone anywhere close to where they got without him improving his playmaking to the degree that he did.
Yeah, no, for sure. And then another guy, again, the Celtics wouldn't have gotten nearly as far as they did without Jaylen Brown. 23 points per game, 3 assists, 3.5 assists, about 6.96 rebounds per game, 47% from the field, 37% from three. He was absolutely spectacular in moments, especially in the NBA Finals where, there were times where he was literally the best player. And again, you're talking about two guys who drafted in the top 5, back-to-back drafts. Just good drafting by the Celtics, in terms of getting these two talented young studs into their system. And I remember when Jaylen Brown signed his extension, everyone was kind of hesitant on it.
But we were too, to be fair. We were.
And he's lived up to it. And then again, he's really improved in a bigger role, and he really became a key figure for the Boston Celtics moving forward. But overall, the league is in great hands, man. There's so much young talent coming into the league, so much growth. It's exciting to see. We'll see what happens in terms of how dispersed this talent is going to be now that the league is kind of shifting around. Is it going to be what it was in the past, where the Western Conference was stronger than the Eastern Conference, all that good stuff. But
I think the East has definitely been the stronger conference for the last couple of years. Maybe.
At the top for sure.
Yeah. But I will say one more honorable mention that I couldn't resist talking about because, no offense, these guys kind of, Devin Booker especially kind of, I don't know, I wasn't feeling the vibe throughout the season, and I'm talking about the fact that Devin Booker, for all of his Kobe talk, once again choked in the playoffs, and then Listen, man, I'm not a fan of saying it because he's a superstar that, I grew up watching. But, people unfortunately giving him the moniker of CPO. I'm talking about Chris Paul. At this point, in terms of Devin Booker, we saw that he's just not mentally that guy. He's just not, unfortunately. Like, he's a really good player, but he's just not that guy.
He's a number 2. He's not a number 1. And that's honestly, that's the harsh reality for a lot of players in the league where, you have to sometimes accept the fact that you're not a number 1 option type of guy. And that number 1 option type of guy is the guy that's going to, you got to want it. You got to want to take it. And like, for example, Kobe Bryant was that type of guy. He wanted all the smoke. He wanted those shots. And the thing is, it's not just about even just taking them. It's about making them in the big moments when they matter most. And that's what Devin Booker failed to do. And that's to some degree, Chris Paul's also failed to do that as well. Like, I mean, let's be real. These are some of the best teams he's had in his career. And, he's fallen short in back-to-back seasons where, he had a chance to win a championship last year. He fell short. And this year, he should have beat the Mavs. Like, the Suns should have beat the Mavs, but they flamed out and they choked.
And not even the fact that they lost. The way that they lost was absolutely terrible.
A true number 1 option in Luka Doncic showed you how to take over a series, how to take over a game. They
got 50-pieced in Game 7. Like, that's not something I think that we'll ever see again.
In Phoenix, it was in your own home building it happened to you.
And again, he's blown, I think, what was it, like the most 2-0 leads or something like that? In playoffs. And then either way for Devin Booker as well, what's interesting is that we all remember that video from like a couple years ago where he was complaining about people double teaming him in open gym. And what's interesting is that the reasons why he's lost in playoffs both times is because he couldn't handle double teams. That's literally why. That's one of the main reasons. So it's very interesting. I think that those videos and what we've seen from Devin Booker, I think, is very telling in terms of what he actually is as an NBA player.
But in all reality, just to be a bit fair to Devin Booker, he's still a very good player.
Oh, yeah.
He can still get better. That's the reality. And the Suns are still a young team. We'll see what happens with their future. Obviously, they do have some guys impending, contracts, disputes, and all that stuff.
And check out our video. We did that video on the Phoenix Suns a couple episodes ago.
Yep, so definitely check that out.
The Phoenix Suns and what they're going to do this offseason.
Yep.
But yeah.
Yeah, but those were some of the things we learned from the 2022 NBA playoffs. Let us know either on social media or in the comment section. What did you learn from these playoffs? I think this was a pretty eye-opening one, and I think you're going to see now a lot of the landscape of the league is going to start changing after this postseason from what we've witnessed so far.
Yeah.
But we'll see what happens. Moving us into the up and under segment for this week. Again, the NBA season is over, so now shit's about to get real. And they're already starting to get real. First and foremost, are you up or under on the 2022 NBA draft? Obviously, at the time of recording, the draft happened last night. Fairly eventful for a draft that was pretty mediocre in general.
Yeah, it's still a good draft, I think, overall, hopefully. But like the top 3 guys, we knew who the top 3 guys were,
but not in the order. So I'll say the order, and you tell me if you're up or under. So the Orlando Magic took Paolo Banchero from Duke. The Oklahoma City Thunder with the second pick took Chet Holmgren. The third pick from the Houston Rockets, they took Jabari Smith. And then obviously there were some other notable trades. Obviously the Knicks.
In fairness, I do understand what they did. In terms of trading. In a weaker draft, trying to free up some money maybe. But if your plan is to sign Jalen Brunson with all that money, I really like Jalen Brunson, but bro, if that's your big plan, that's rough. But yeah, I think overall, I think the top 3 actually worked out pretty well because the Orlando Magic got who they wanted. They have kind of a hole at that power forward spot. They have the Franz Wagner.
So wait,
well, they also have Mo Wagner.
Can't Banchero play small forward?
Well, but he's more of a power forward, right?
Because they still have Jonathan Isaac. People are forgetting Jonathan Isaac is still on the team.
Yeah, but who knows what's happening with that guy, to be honest, right? And then you have Wendell Carter, who really took a bunch of leaps last year. And then you'll have to figure out your guard situation after that.
I mean, you have 3 capable guards.
Yeah, but I think they got who they wanted. Chet Holmgren is a good pick for the OKC Thunder because they have time to develop him. They're not doing anything right now anyways. So he's the one I think that projected to have the most development out of the top 3. So
Houston got a very good pick in Jabari Smith in terms of getting that bigger body, that NBA ready body, athletic as hell. Pairing that next to Jalen Green and Kevin Porter Jr. I think is a pretty good pairing, to be honest.
And they just got rid of Christian Wood to free him up as well.
Yep.
Him and Alperen Sengun. So I think that worked out very well for Houston. Quickly about our, Toronto Raptors. I think we got who we wanted. We've been basically, like, all of us Raptors fans have been saying Christian Koloko for the last month, right? So it's, it worked out very well for us to get him. And I think he'll fit very well. I don't know how much he's going to play, obviously, this season, but I think, the projections, hopefully, he'll work out really well.
A good defensive fit. And I think in terms of, like, where his potential can go, it's pretty high up there. Like, if we can develop him right, which I have a lot of faith in a developmental system, we could be looking at a good player here for the future. But overall, I mean, the draft was pretty interesting. Before we even get to the next one, I'll actually throw one in here. We had a trade, actually, between the Portland Trailblazers and the Detroit Pistons before the draft. It was the trade that sent Jeremy Grant and I believe the 46th pick to the Portland Trailblazers in exchange for, I believe, the 35th pick in the draft to the Detroit Pistons. And I think there was another pick involved in
They got I forget, but I think I remember, like, it worked out pretty well for the Pistons from what I remember in terms of draft picks.
I think it was like a first and a second.
They drafted somebody with that first round pick. I'm kind of blank. Again, we're not really the biggest college ball fans either, so bear with us.
Yeah.
But for the Portland Trailblazers as well,
dude, I'm up on it.
I mean, they got somebody who will help for sure in Jeremy Grant.
I like the fit.
But the issue is you still have your core issue of what exactly do you want to do with Damian Lillard?
I think the way Portland's looking at it and the way they're approaching this offseason is that, listen, Dame, who do you want? We're gonna try to go get him.
I mean, he wanted Jeremy Grant, so.
And they went out and they got him. Now, whether or not they keep Nurkic, now they're saying they want to re-sign him, but I like this move from the standpoint that he fits with Damian Lillard, not only offensively because he can also be that secondary or third guy, but he also defends, which is something that Damian Lillard doesn't do, and he defends better than CJ McCollum did for you. So I think it's an upgrade versus CJ McCollum, and I think he's cheaper than CJ McCollum as well. So I actually really like, and you didn't have to give up much of anything. You just gave up what? Picks.
Well, I mean, they also have Simons as,
because they used the trade exception too to make this deal work.
And then they also drafted Shaedon Sharp, so shout out more Canadians. Next up, are you up or under on the Charlotte Hornets signing Steve Clifford as their new head coach after Kenny Atkinson turned down the Hornets job because apparently they didn't really want to pay him as much as he wanted. So, are you up or under on this hire?
Yeah, I'm under. Dude, well, really? Like Steve
Clifford was there 5 years ago.
Really? It feels like he was there like 2 years ago, to be honest with you. But like he was just there. like Michael Jordan, are you like, I'm sorry, like, was this like really the best option for you to do? Like, I would have paid the extra money to get Kenny Atkinson because at least he's somebody different. You got to get a new voice in there.
Apparently, the Charlotte Hornets have a rep for being kind of stingy with coaching salaries. But I will say, I'm not completely up on this move either. Just because it's like, bro, you've already had the guy. But I will say, for this team specifically, we know what this team is, right? Flashy offense, very dynamic with Melo, LaMelo, Miles Bridges, PJ Washington, etc. And then they are very loose with the ball, as is the case with the young teams, and they play no defense whatsoever. What are the two things Steve Clifford will immediately clean up? Defense and, ball security. He will make sure those things are fixed immediately. So I think in terms of the temporary fix of what you're trying to do with this team, I think it works.
But he's not a long-term answer.
But he's not a long-term answer.
And I think that's the mistake that the Hornets make, because you need to get that long-term guy in there who can take this team to the next level. And I don't think Steve Clifford is that guy. But we'll see what happens with Steve Clifford. But welcome back to Charlotte, I guess. Welcome back. And finally, are you up or under on the Kyrie Irving drama? Remember, it's back, and this time, he's trying to blow up a whole other team. Honestly, he's trying to blow up the league at this point because Kyrie Irving is all over the place. Basically, Kyrie Irving and the Nets have reached an impasse in terms of a contract extension. The Nets want to give him a short-term deal. Kyrie, being Kyrie, wants a long-term deal. Now, the reality is that if he picks up his option, the Nets might look to trade him, or they'll try to work out the extension. But if they can't work out in the extension, this is Kyrie's threat that he's going to opt out and basically walk for nothing. And now the Nets don't want to lose him for nothing, but at the same time, they're in the position where if they give Kyrie Irving what he wants, how reliable will he be? But if they don't give him what he wants, A, who are they going to trade him to? And B, what the hell is happening with Kevin Durant?
I mean, I'm under on this whole situation, right? Because, I mean, I would say I'm up on it in the sense that I didn't want this team. I was kind of a Brooklyn Nets hater, right? I think we both are. Like, not a hater, but I don't like the Brooklyn Nets, right?
Listen, I liked what the Nets were doing before they got KD and Kyrie. To be honest with you, I liked what they were doing because I thought they were doing things the right way. But then they went out, they got KD and Kyrie, and basically just scrapped everything that they were doing. Like, the only guy I think who's still on the roster is Joe Harris.
Yeah, exactly. Now, again, like, this Kyrie situation, but it's just more of what we've seen, unfortunately, from Kyrie in his career, right? And again, as we've talked about it, right? Like, Kyrie has put KD in a bad situation time and time again since they both got there.
I feel bad
and this
for KD.
is just another instance of it, right? KD even had to, I think he made a statement about, like, you know, he's going to stay out of this whole situation. The fact that KD even needs to be put in this situation, you know, speaks volumes, right? And again, I'm not the biggest fan of KD, especially what he did in Golden State, but like
There's no
at
denying.
some point you gotta like kind of feel for the guy as well. Especially when KD's played his heart out in the past couple of years,
There's no
especially
denying.
coming off of an Achilles injury.
Dude, he's top 3 player in the world. Like, there's no one can dispute that.
Or top 5.
When healthy, when he's healthy, I think he's top 3.
Let's say top 5.
Listen, well, to be safe, fine, top 5. But I think he's top 3 when healthy. And the fact of the matter is this guy should be able to win more if he actually had a reliable co-star. If the guy who made him come to Brooklyn to begin with, actually, showed up to work. And then you got Ben Simmons, which don't even get me started about Ben Simmons. You can just watch some of our other episodes where I ripped Ben Simmons to shreds. But, like, do we know if he's playing basketball? Do we know if that's a priority in his life? Kyrie Irving, and this is what I heard, Kyrie Irving is probably... He epitomizes what's wrong with today's NBA. With the modern-day superstar who thinks they can do whatever they want and with no consequences. And the reality is that I feel bad for the Brooklyn Nets in a way because damned if you do, damned if you don't. Like, you're basically screwed either way. Now, reportedly, if the Nets and Kyrie Irving don't reach the agreement, so the Lakers and Knicks... Heat.
Basically the typical teams.
Yeah, the Lakers are probably the most interested, but some of those teams are the teams that Kyrie Irving will be interested in going to. But it's just a mess of a situation, man. But we'll see what happens. It's an ongoing and fluid situation with Kyrie Irving and the Brooklyn Nets. But welcome to the offseason, I guess.
Yep.
This is where the drama starts. Oh, and there's also reports that Kevin Durant might be considering his future if Kyrie Irving is gone.
Well, I mean, he should.
It's the doomsday scenario for the Brooklyn Nets, basically. And it's all thanks to Kyrie Irving.
And especially now they've given up those picks that they once had, right? So
hey, it's the whole Billy King thing all over again.
I mean, it's not as bad as that, granted.
No,
that was
not.
terrible.
No,
that was absolutely terrible. But
no, it's not. But yeah, no, it's a very tough situation in Brooklyn. But we keep you guys updated. We'll keep monitoring it if anything does happen. But with that concludes this week's episode. We hope you guys enjoyed it. Definitely subscribe to the show on all the various platforms. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher Radio, and of course YouTube. Definitely subscribe so you don't miss great off-season content from us coming in the near future. Also follow us on social media, Twitter and Instagram at @UpLetterN_podcast, Facebook.com/UpAndUnderPodcast for all the latest updates whenever we post a new episode or a reaction to news as they occur. Definitely check that out if you haven't done so. Also, check out our website, upandunderpodcast.com. It's our central hub for the show. It's a place where we write blog posts with every single episode, so if you don't have time to listen or watch the full thing, you can read about it. Every episode has the video, audio, and the blog all in one place for you. So definitely check that out if you haven't done so. And yeah, man, the off season is just getting started. Free agency, I think, is just around the corner. Things are getting real, man. Things are getting real. This is probably one of my favorite times of the year, to be honest with you. But yeah, with that concludes this week's episode. We'll see you guys on the next one. Take it easy.
Easy.